And welcome Vishal to our Abax Forum. Just a small word on what Abax Forum is about. Well, Abax Forum is what we are having now. We try to do that roughly about 2-3 times a year with clients who are friends or business partners who are friends. All our clients and all our business partners are friends anyway. So for those that really, are got something meaningful, especially in relation to the continent, to Africa, and clearly Vishal Agarwal is one of these. And so we are very happy today to welcome you, Vishal, for Give to Get, that book that was written by Vishal and was released in March earlier this year. Already doing extremely well.
With the promotion and support of many in this room. Some of the front.
Thank you, everyone. And with the promotion and support and sales that we're going to make today, we'll go up again. So Vishal, thanks very much for being here. My first question for
Can I say hello? I want to say
sure.
Say hello. Hello, everybody. I am so delighted to be here, and I'm just excited to say hello to a lot of you because I have such an old relationship with you, this island, and many friends here. So 12 years ago, 3 folks with the dream, Richard, Nusrat, Mahim, backed by former partners of PwC, the one that's about to retire, I'll talk about in a moment, had this dream of building a separate fiduciary business. And they went out and did a management buyout from some of us that should have actually taken equity in the business. We didn't. And look what have they built today. So in as humble a way as I could say, I am so proud of what Abax has built today. So give everybody a clap first. You all have built Abax is something I am so proud to call you my friends. So thank you for that. And then Andre, my old dear friend and partner, I have to say this to you. So for those of you that don't know, Andre and I used to be partners. Andre Bonnier, the senior partner, still is the senior partner of PwC Mauritius, about to retire in 4 days, 5 days, 6 days of counting. There's nothing about Andre in retirement. He might tell you stories about boats and sunny lives, but I know Andre, he's going to do great things, greater things. And I'm so delighted to go to these things and see friends like you. So thank you for having me.
Thanks, Vishal. And so, first one, Vishal, precisely, is tell us a little bit about yourself, about where you are today. I think he's retired before you, Andre.
Very well.
You look younger, eh?
It was the work in progress that killed me.
So, Vishal, over to you. Tell us a little bit about your journey, where you come from and what you've done in there.
Sure. So I began with Legacy Pricewaterhouse in Washington, D.C. in 1992. I was a $8 an hour intern. I just graduated from the University of Arizona. I had a business plan that got fully funded in an entrepreneurial competition, and then a senior partner from Washington, D.C. lured me with this corporate job and this blue and white logo that Pricewaterhouse used to have in the days. These days it's a little more colorful. And that's how I kind of began my journey. In 2004, I moved to the region. So I married a 5th generation Kenyan in 1999, who spent 5-6 years struggling with the Northeast winters in Boston and trying to bully me into coming to the region. And then some former partners at Pricewaterhouse realized that I had Africa links. So the rest of the negotiation was between Mira, my wife, and my former PwC partners, who brought me to the region in 2004. And I got to work with great guys like Andre, who taught me so much, and some of it, I've called him and told him, some of my own learnings that you see in the book are through my association with people like Andre and the business that I've done with others. In 2014, I left the partnership to join General Electric. I ran the balance sheet for the last 3 years, and after a 24+ year corporate career, I thought enough. So I was a bit tired. I saw 60+ year olds retiring, and Andre did it in a much better manner than what I'm about to say to you. But retiring and then wondering, what am I going to do? Right? Am I going to sit on a board? Am I going to be a consultant? And I didn't want to go through that. So I felt that I have another 14, 15 years to that date, and this is the time where I might have a little more energy. The book is perhaps a transition, and I've tried to build a little bit of an investment firm. So I have, in my mid-40s, perhaps another 50 years of runway, and a little more energy than I would if I was truly retired.
But when did you start? At what age did you start?
Well, no recollection whatsoever. Look, I began a little bit from the entrepreneurial journey. My first business was probably when I was 17 years old. And my first year in college, I ran a computer reseller business. There was a computer company out of the Northeast United States called Leading Edge. I got myself a dealership. I was 17 and a half years old. I got myself a dealership, and I sold all my college professors boxed computers out of my dorm room. So that was my first real foray into business.
Right, okay. Good. And so here you are, Vishal, and mid-40s, you said?
With some denial.
Now I understand. So, 25 years of experience, I would say, roughly. Yeah. And after that, you decided to leave GE, and not any company, leave PricewaterhouseCoopers, leave GE. And now, what are you doing? And why the book?
Let me do the why the book, because you're here to talk about book first. So I felt over a period of time that I was privileged as a leader, that I had the opportunity to mentor, to talk to people, and I was doing a lot of that stuff. And in that role, I would see a few people a week. I would get on the calls with other mentees. I would get a chance to chat with peers. And then I realized I can do a few of these things, or I can kind of escalate it. And the book, I thought, was a good way to put all that stuff that I was often talking about, whether it was culture, or building teams, or building trust, or dealing with burnout, being bored on the job. I think all of that stuff that was happening in my office, in the privacy of my office, I thought that, why not share it with the world? And there's a second reason that I share in forums like this, and I will tell you the story, that if my grandfather was alive, he would be a very old, 107 years or so. So he's been gone a long time. When he was my age, right, he was in a demographic that probably had, amongst him and his peers, not even 10% of people with college degrees. He was a mechanical engineer at his time. There were not even 10% in his demographic. Think about your own grandparents, your own grandfathers, whatever your age is. Not even 10% of people in his ecosystem that had a college degree. Do we all know 10% of people in our demographic, in our ecosystem, who don't have a college degree? The world has changed. We all know Harvard and Cornell and Ivy Leaguers and Oxford types, they're a dime a dozen. They're not kings, they're smarter than us. The role of an expert today in a YouTube, Twitter generation is actually really muddy, because a kid with a Twitter account and 19 million followers, or a fraction of that, becomes a much bigger expert, much faster than you and I. A book, I think, cuts through that, because a book is not a business card. A book doesn't open doors, because a business card you can print on your computer. A book, I think, is akin to that college degree. You have to earn it. So you don't know 10% of people in your ecosystem today that have written a book, and therefore you should too.
Right, and you choose to call your book Give to Get. When I first saw this title, it didn't much to me personally. Then I wanted to look and understand what it was about. I think I knew. But at the same time, I challenge the title a little bit, Vishal. Why do you want to get when you give? Why do you want to give freely? I mean, give. Why not?
Sure, and I have this question a lot. So first of all, the ethos of the title comes from a principle of negotiation that I've always held dear, that I learned over a bit of time. So I'm a commercial negotiator, and I found in a negotiation, if I gave first, if I made a first proposal, if from an opening standpoint I offered, I got back. So if that was my learning from a negotiation standpoint, as I applied it to my career, I got a lot of joy. Now, if you are true with yourselves and ask yourself, we actually are very transactional today as people. So when we talk and we call someone, we're usually calling for transactional reasons. We're calling to get. We're calling to ask. We're calling to request back. Right? A good chunk of what we ask for in short phone calls, by emails, by meetings, is we're asking for stuff. We don't offer. So from a reality standpoint, we all need stuff back. All I'm saying is if you give first, if you give trust in relationship principally first, you will get. And I'm not a charity house, and nor are you. Some of you might be more philanthropical than others. But this book and our business lives is not about giving, just giving, right? So we all want stuff back. I'm not suggesting that if you give, you should get back from the same source. I'm not suggesting that if you give, you must count your returns. I'm saying that if you give freely, to your point, it comes back to you, and you'll get back.
Right. Well, thanks for that enlightening. And you see, one point that I have not seen so much in your book, I think you touched on it a couple of times maybe, is about the gender issue, the inclusivity issue. As you may see here, there's a number of ladies, and at Abax we're 65% women, 35% men. And although I must say that as you grow through the ranks, that's the average for the total Abax. As you go through the ranks, the percentage is not quite the same. What is your take on that, Vishal? How do you see the inclusivity of women or else people who normally are a bit disfavored by society? And how do you see that in relation to your corporate experiences?
Let me start by telling a story related to my book, a little bit of a backstory, and then I'll sort of weave it in. When you read the book, if you read the book, you'll see there's a call-out box in chapter 2 to women. And in my call-out box, essentially, while I'm trying to pay tribute, hopefully in an authentic way, what I'm really saying is, I don't have a clue, right? The chapter says new person syndrome or new guy syndrome. And what I try to do in the call-out box is say, hey everybody, I'm using the word guy. It's too difficult for me to write person or people or you and me or women and men. I'm a guy. Let me just get away by writing guy. I love you. You're great. I don't have anything further to add to this. This is hopefully a gender agnostic book. Hopefully you get as much from it as me, but I'm not pretending. I can't begin to imagine what you're going through. This book is not to talk about that stuff. You deal with things that are far more difficult. Sorry, right? I mean, that was my first draft. Okay. And then I reflected on it further and chatted to a couple of people that I really trust and felt it was just not good enough. That as leaders, men and women, we have this great responsibility to not be biased, to not be sexist, to stamp it out. And no Oprah in some glitzy Hollywood affair needs to tell us this. No Me Too campaign needs to reset this. It's just good business sense. You know, in our professional service lives, and I've got lawyer friends here, I've got Andre from PwC, we've seen this stuff. We've seen some really dark days with women getting sidelined, with not being paid enough, with sexual discrimination in the workplace, and on and on. You know, women that become mothers and come back to work, how the male counterparts treat them as they're leaving, how they treat them as they come back. It's terrible. It absolutely is a travesty. And I mean it in not a patronizing way, I mean it in a we have a responsibility way. Right? So I think that's kind of a realization, and I feel that, you know, while the book truly is gender agnostic and hopefully both men and women get equal from it, I absolutely recognize that women colleagues have so much more to deal with when it comes to culture and navigation, dealing with, you know, building stakeholders at work, and you know, getting the trust of their teams, getting the trust of their peers, getting the trust of their seniors, being able to earn credit, get promotions, deal with burnout. You know, the burnout that our women colleagues go through is for not just the stuff that we know, but stuff that as men we won't even begin to understand. Right? So I think that's it.
Okay, you mentioned culture just now, and one of the chapters in your book, which I like very much, is that concept of a culture within a culture. I don't know whether you guys or people have read the book. Very interesting, and I think very topical, where Vishal talks about, you just mentioned as well about a new person, and that's a new person in a company, or that a new person in a new role, in a new department. How that person, what are the challenges that this person has, and what are the experiences he's been through, and some extremely valuable advice. And I know this is extremely relevant for most of us through our career. Either we change jobs, or we change department, or we have a new role. So maybe you can give us a bit of insight on that culture within culture.
Sure. And the one thing that I've tried very hard to do is I tell a personal tale in each chapter, like that something that happened to me, and then perhaps show you that something that happened to somebody else. So my culture and culture tale was when I first moved to the region with PricewaterhouseCoopers in the region in Nairobi. And while I might have had big jobs in the past, while I might have worked for, you know, Pricewaterhouse, legacy Pricewaterhouse in the US, I thought I had this big leadership job. I thought I was known to the firm. And by moving to the region, I thought, well, you know, there might be cultural issues and learning a new country or a new region, but the firm I know, and I have a good, nice title and a big mandate, it should be fine. What I didn't realize, and whether you take a new role outside the company, or in my case, within the same firm that I kind of was born in or grew up in, what I didn't realize is that there is a culture within that culture, within the same firm, and even if you were to cross across and go to another bank or another firm, in a senior role, they don't talk to you because of your resume. Maybe the HR department and the guys that hired you because of your resume, but the guys that you eat lunch with, that you go to war with, that you develop, you know, great new opportunities with, don't care about your resume. They care about trust and relationship. They care about track record. They care about more stories together. So they will actually know you. And what happens to most new people is they get discounted. So most teams will look at a new leader and say, hey, what do they know? But, you know, we do it different here. That was just not important enough. He or she couldn't have possibly done it as we do it. right? And they isolate you. This journey of trust and relationship, accelerate the journey of going to battle along with your team, earning the scars, is probably the only way to get through culture to culture. And to leaders, I would say, as you make these big bets, because we all do, we hire great talent and we bring them in, and then we leave them alone. Onboarding, HR process, none of that stuff can ever equal to really thinking about the fact that here's a new person, let me help them, let me create an environment. Right? It's not some HR policy or onboarding process. You've got to make an effort, and you're going to lose your top talent if you don't actually pay attention to the fact that there is a culture within a culture in every organization.
You talk a lot in your book about relationship, trust, relationship, people, and I sort of remember you talked about internal Twitter, the importance of that, the importance of, I think you call it the bullseye syndrome. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? I thought that quite interesting.
Sure, so two different concepts. So if you think about office politics and gossip and all this stuff, and it's the truth, guys, let's call a spade a spade. This happens to us. We spend more time at work than we do ever with our families, right? People talk about other people. People gossip, their perceptions, their water cooler conversations. So I call that stuff the internal Twitter, right? And I don't say go and participate, go and tweet. I say you must be aware and you must know your radar screen. So those of you that have Twitter accounts that you never use and you don't actually tweet very much, but you follow 1,000 people and you actually pay attention to what the world is saying, that's sort of what I'm saying. Be aware, monitor that internal Twitter, know if they have negative perceptions about you. Know if you have misalignments, because only then can you actually do something about it. So having a high EQ or emotional IQ and knowing that stuff allows you to, hopefully in an authentic way, counter it. You must counter it. Right? So that's Twitter, we're going to monitor the Twitter. What was the...
No, I also mentioned about the bullseye syndrome. I mean, that bullseye back.
So the bullseye syndrome for me, over the course of my career, I realized that as you go from manager to senior manager to partner, for those of you that are in professional services or whatever the equivalent designation is, think about a manager. You just made manager. Right? In my metaphor, you now have a bullseye on your back. You're a target. There's accountability, there's burden of responsibility, there is outcomes that are expected out of you that was nothing like yesterday. On July 1st, when you get promoted and you make that manager, you have a bullseye on your back. As you move up in your career, you have a senior manager kind of role, that bullseye is just pumped this week. It's not even fitting on your back. When you get to riches level, you actually don't have a bullseye. You're painted from head to toe. There's no bullseye anymore. Head to toe, he's a moving target. So as you get bigger and bigger in your role, the bullseye just gets bigger and bigger. And rightfully so. There is a responsibility, there's a burden. How you handle it and what you do with it, and your awareness of the fact that you're a moving target, right, is how you navigate your life.
And how do you sleep at night?
Well, it depends on who with.
You're right. So our choices. In the same vein, of course, Vishal talks a lot about leadership, and you talk about detractors, right? Well, there's a few other things that you talk about detractors. I'd like you to talk to us a little more about that. How do you deal with it? What does it mean, first of all, and how do you deal with detractors?
So, look, my version of life is that there are only three kinds of people in your team. Only three kinds of people. you have ambassadors. The ambassadors are your fans. As a leader, the ambassadors are the guys that get behind your program very quickly. They love you, they're your biggest advocates, they're your fans, they're the people who always will ride you. That's your ambassador. Then you have skeptics. These people sit on the fence, right? They're neither here nor there. Those are your skeptics. And then you have something called a detractor. Now, if you think about a hill, and I've tried to illustrate this in the book, if you think about a hill, your fans are actually standing up on the mountain. Your skeptics are somewhere halfway in between, and the detractors are right at the bottom. Most leaders go and stand with their ambassadors at the top of the mountain. Most leaders only pay attention to their fans. They send them on the best learning and development courses, they take them to the best conferences, they take them to the most important client meetings, they give them promotions, they give them bonuses, they give them lots of candy. At best, you might throw some candy to the skeptics, and you forget the detractors. So you're just taking guys that don't actually like you, that want to backstab you, that don't want you to be their leader, and you've isolated them far more. So my humble view of the world is, you actually as a leader go and stand down there, and you push upwards. Now, maybe it won't work, and I have many cases of it hasn't worked for me. I've had robust conversations with friends and peers and CEOs, and my own wife around, maybe I should just let go. Finding the right time to let go is a different subject and a different art, but starting at the bottom and giving these detractors oxygen, love, trying to convert them, is, I think, the true gift a leader could bring to their team, and the returns are enormous, because I have converted detractors. Now, most leaders will lie if they haven't had experiences with all three. I've also converted ambassadors the other way around. Right? I've moved skeptics up, and I've taken ambassadors and dropped them to detractors. Nobody gave me a life's manual. I learned it myself, as you're doing. Right? So I think that the trick is not to lose your ambassadors, move your skeptics up the mountain, and always support your detractors. Up to a point. It's okay to fire them beyond a certain point.
And then you talk, within leadership, you talk of the concept of being a servant leader, which is quite interesting as well. Can you just enlighten us a little bit on that? And maybe also, Vishal, I'd like to understand more, and I think that's relevant for many people who are in organizations. How do you play your role as a leader in a vertical team, people who are vertically reporting to you, as opposed to your role as a leader across functions?
So I feel today a contemporary leader is a servant leader. And let me unpack that for you. So I haven't done railway in many years, ladies and gentlemen. And a lot of my peers, if they are truthful with themselves, they haven't done railway in many years either. I can go on a business trip without my computer. Now, what that means is not that I'm not hardworking, not that I'm not driving outcomes. What I mean by railway is there's a Swahili word called fundi, which is artisan skills. I haven't applied my artisan skills in many, many years. I've not had to bash a spreadsheet in a long time. I've not had to write a PowerPoint presentation. I've not had to write a client report in God alone knows how long. Right? My PowerPoint and Excel skills are pretty darn rusty. Right? Now, a lot of my peers are probably in that same genre. We have such great talent around us. We have far more educated, smarter people around us all day long. What is our real job? My humble view of the world is our real job is to serve them, to build teams, inspire teams, create a safe swim lane for teams, take bullets for our teams, deal with all the rubbish that they have to deal with, with fights with other silos, with other leaders, with other territories, and, you know, the Western and the local conversations that happen in a lot of our businesses, dealing with that, putting your body in the middle of those conversations, that's the job of a leader. It's really a job to serve. So that's what a servant leader does. Now, I feel that, and I've made enough of these mistakes myself, I feel that we all like to work vertically. We all start out in silos and fiefdoms, right? And the more people and budget we get, the larger kingdom we want. You know, I always give the example of the finance department. I apologize to everyone that is a CFO or controller here. Finance people, they love building kingdoms. Right? HR people too, but finance people love kingdoms. They keep hiring more receivable clerks and this and that, and they keep building this big silo. And they say, oh, this is for finance to do. Right? And that's just a proxy of a fiefdom or a silo. So today to think about a silo is just not contemporary. And it's, frankly speaking, corporate suicide. I think that you ought to play horizontally. And, you know, I know a lot of you listen to my friend Robin Sharma. He's my personal friend. He comes here a lot. A lot of you sort of follow him. He talks about a lead without a title, for example. The other version of that a lot of you I know practice in large multinationals has become very cool to talk about going horizontal or some version of that. But we must do it truthfully. We must do it authentically. To actually say that, look, I might be in this department, but my client needs outcomes. My client doesn't care about this department versus that department. My client just cares about outcomes. So I will do what it takes to drive outcomes. And I don't need to do it in a manner that treads on other people's toes, but I can do it in a manner that serves. I can do it in a manner that is helpful. And if I want to learn something outside of my space, it's okay to put up my hand and say, I'm intellectually curious. It's a good thing, I think. And I want to learn more, and I want to service more, and I'm doing it on my own dime and my own extra time. So I deliver outcomes every day that I'm supposed to, but I want to learn more about another area, and I'll do that for free. Right? I think that's playing horizontal, and that's being the makings of a really good leader.
And that's give to get.
Well, yeah, because you're giving yourself more, and what you'll get back is hopefully great stuff. And ultimately, look, just back on this give to get, I was doing a book launch event in Bahrain a couple months ago, and there was a CEO at the back of the room, and he said, you know, Vishal, this all sounds great, but I want to tell you about me. I want to tell you that I'm asked to give all day long. So people want bonuses, people want promotions, people want discounts, people want product on time, people want better service. They keep asking me for stuff. In my role, I give all day long. What do you mean that I must give more? And the question back for anyone who thinks that is, are you giving trust? And are you investing in relationships? And I think the answer for most people, if they actually sort of think about it hard, we don't do that. So if we were to invest in trust and relationship and give that as a primary give, then what are the chances that the person comes into our office and says, hey boss, I did that great piece of work yesterday, can you give me an extra bonus? Hey Mr. Customer relation, can you give me a larger discount? Hey, supply chain situation, take off so much on the price because I've got a new competitor in town that I can commoditize with you, right? You with. What are the chances that people will treat us transactionally and as a commodity if we truly invest from a trust and relationship standpoint? So that has served me well, and that's the ethos of Gifted.
Thanks. I will allow some time for question, obviously. Just one sort of point I want to make, Vishal, is I hear what you're saying. I'd like to hear you also, and you do talk about failures.
Yeah.
Failure is a reality for everybody. At some point in time we fail. So I'd like to hear a little bit about how do we deal with that. And also a bit linked to that, about that feeling that we have sometimes of being disengaged. And you call it, in a sense, you call it underwhelmed. How do you deal with these two?
Sure. So anyone in leadership, anyone in management, who ever says, or in life, that ever says, I've not failed, it's just purely lying to you. It's purely lying to you. I've had more dark days than sunny days. I have more reasons where I fell down than where I stood on a mountain on a pedestal. And I got some private time, for example, with Jack Ma. For those of you that know Jack Ma from Alibaba, he was in Kenya last fall. I got a little bit of private time with him. And we were just chatting a little about this. You know, my book was about to come out, and we were just chatting about it. And he said to me, Vishal, I have dark days today. This is one of the richest men on the planet. Man on the planet. I have days where I fail today. So I think failure in itself is not a rare thing. It is an everyday thing, hopefully not an everyday thing, but a fairly common thing in our lives. How we deal with it, I think, is really key. So learning from it, having the courage to move on. I talk a little bit about in my first chapter, The Lion and the Goat. We can chat about that. Having the confidence, how you carry yourself, how you pick yourself up in those days. What do you learn? How do you recalibrate? Are you making the same mistakes tomorrow again? Right? Then you probably deserve to be slapped, right? But are you recalibrating? Are you learning? I think those things really matter from a failure standpoint. Right? And then Richard asked me about being underwhelmed. So underwhelmed is probably a fancy word for saying I'm bored at work. Right? And that happens to all of us, or will happen to all of us. So we all do the same thing over and over again. We love our jobs, hopefully, and have great passion for what we bring to the table and deliver great results. But how many deals do you want to do? How many times are you going to manufacture the same product? How many times are you going to serve the same client? And so you've seen in all the seasons, you've seen enough of Christmases and Diwalis around the same process, and now you're a little bored. So if you're feeling underwhelmed, if you're feeling that you're not leveraged enough, and actually it happens, I promise you, as you get more and more senior, it happens, believe it or not, even more. Right? Because there's nobody you can turn to. I'll park that for a moment, but as you get more senior, there's nobody you can turn to and say, hey, I'm getting bored, buddy. You know, can I get more? Can I get a new responsibility? You've got to do something about it yourself. And in that chapter, I talk a lot about it. So one of the things, you know, I would encourage people that are thinking about that or are being troubled by it. You know, there's a great Harvard, great Yale report and a professor that did a great piece of work that's been used around the world. And I learned that in some leadership work that I did called job crafting. And what that really allows you to do is to kind of say, look, I'll take a white piece of canvas and I'll restate, I'm not going to change the terms of my employment, but I'll restate what my job should look like for myself. And I'll practice that. I'll chat with my manager about it. I'll deliver all the outcomes that I'm supposed to, but I'll do more. Or I'll figure out a way to do it more smartly. Or I'll develop bigger goals for myself and the company. I think it's things of that nature, rather than sitting back and being mope about it, or being depressed about it, or walking around and showing it to your teams. Because the moment your teams see that or feel that you are depressed or down or whatever, remember the bullseye. There's something that happens with the bullseye. It brings you down.
In the first chapter of your book, Shah, you start the book in fact like this to say, looking at, a lion never loses sleep over the opinion of a goat. The lion and the goat. Quite an interesting concept. Can you just talk us through that.
But so this goes back to the story I tell in the first chapter, which was a little bit of my life's adaptive learning. And I kind of feel that there are only two people you'll see in the workplace. I talk about 3 members of your team, but there are only 2 kinds of people that you'll experience in the workplace. Someone who's either a lion or a goat. So let me talk about the lion first. So if you think about the concept of a lion, people pay a lot of money to go on safari. Hopefully come together, go on safari, and see animals. And if you see all this great game, and you come back with pictures to your family and your loved ones, and you don't bring back a picture of the lion, or you haven't seen a lion, you know, people either laugh at you or you feel really bad about all this money you spend. Everyone sort of says, oh, but you didn't see a lion? How come you didn't see a lion? What happened the last time? I said, don't see a lion. How come you don't see a lion? Everyone's fixated on the lion. Let me tell you what I think about when I think about a goat. The only thing I think about when I hear a goat is my Friday biryani. That's all I can think about. Right? So if there are only 2 people at work, lions and goats, which one do you want? Now, let me unpack that for you a little more. My lion doesn't kill you. My lion doesn't roar at you all day long. My lion is not aggressive. My lion doesn't show you his teeth or their teeth. My lion is regal. My lion is confident. My lion carries themselves all day long. My lion doesn't take crap. And in the hardest of times, in the most difficult of those dark days we talked about earlier, for example, if a lion has been tranquilized on a Kenyan game park because of some veterinary reasons and need to be moved, the lion's head goes back. The lion rises. If you do to it, I promise you'll see that a lion actually rises up. The head goes back as they're about to be shot or tranquilized. The lion doesn't know that you're tranquilizing it. The lion thinks he's going to be killed. The head goes back. You know what happens to a goat? I see a lot of brown people. There's one, you know, the Bakri version of goat. As you're about to slaughter a goat, and I lived in Iran as a child, there's a festival called Bakri Eid. As you're about to slaughter a goat, the head goes down. So that's the DNA of these 2 people. In the hardest of times, a lion goes back, and a goat gives you their neck. Right? Which one do you want? That's the lion and goat.
Great. Before we go to questions, what is your favorite part or passage or line of the book, Vishal?
So I was naughty, okay? I'm a business guy. So what I give you folks is every time I want to make a point, I change the font, okay? So, or I wrote it a different way. So it is not difficult to find my favorite passage in the book. I'll show it to you. It is here. So I'll read it for you. It's page 52. The entire page is written in a different font to make the point. But it goes as follows. It says, one of the most important and valuable lessons I've learned throughout my entire business career is that you must give to get. If you want acceptance and trust and admiration from your team, peers, business associates, and customers alike, then you have to give them your acceptance, trust, and admiration, and the very best of your valuable skills. If you want them to deliver for you, then you have to deliver for them first. Give to get. It goes on to talk about how you can do it, but that's my favorite passage.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Vishal. Well done. Guys, we want that to be interactive, so who has the first question for Vishal?
One of you wonderful Abax people, I want to ask for a discount tomorrow morning.
You want to take the mic?
Alright, can I just
Is there
shout?
a microphone? Or maybe you can shout, yeah.
Alright. Thanks very much for that. That's very insightful. So thank you, and thanks again for sharing those thoughts with us. My current question is, what would you say to a leader who has lost the trust of his team and his peers and his people? How can he or she regain that trust within that same environment with the same people?
It's actually a really good question, and it actually happens more often than
We might take in mind.
it happens more often than people imagine, because it might be a momentary lapse, it could be permanent, which is even more difficult. But I think, again, by this principle of giving first, right? So by serving more, by going deeper in the relationship, not in a conniving way, but I feel by having great amount of emotional IQ and having great amount of empathy, it's okay to say you're wrong. It's okay to say that you're sorry. So I'll use some examples. If you look at Mark Zuckerberg, sort of very quickly after the Mark Zuckerberg saga, I took advantage of the saga and I wrote this piece that got picked up by CNBC. I needed to publicize my book, so publicity is not a bad thing. And the whole piece was all around, I felt that the reason why he was in the line of fire was not because Facebook screwed up, not because of that breach that happened from a confidentiality and data privacy standpoint, but because he breached our trust. Let me explain. For years, Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook has been in the limelight of, are you stealing my personal data? It's not a new subject. Data privacy and IP protection related to Facebook is something that we've been kind of hearing about for, even in our lay lives, for a long time. But Mark Zuckerberg came to your and my dining room, to your and my private space, and said, no, it's all okay. We're not going to sell your data, your personal data. So then when Cambridge Analytica happened, he broke our trust. That's hard to manage. Like Tony Fernandez did this, we talked about this, for those of you that follow this part of the world, if you look at Tony Fernandez, the very charming, flamboyant CEO of AirAsia in Malaysia, he said, well, I came under political pressure from the incumbent government, and therefore I made all the flight attendants wear blue one day, and the airline painted blue, and I made this special video in favor of a very corrupt government, please forgive me, they would have put in my license. Well, there were a dozen business leaders that didn't worry about that, had the courage, and waded through it. So, what are you asking for forgiveness for is important. Authenticity matters. You can't talk about it from two sides of your mouth. It's not possible to mend that. So if you go at it from a purely authentic manner, then I think it is possible to mend. And I too have had situations where I felt I've lost, the backing of a team or an individual, and the amount of work that you've got to do to that is enormous. Most people don't do that. Most people don't go spend time. They just kind of find a way to sideline or think that it'll never happen, or ignore it, or fire the person, or move themselves. It's just no way to navigate your career. You have to rebuild it. You have to go deeper. I hope I've answered your question.
Thank you.
Next question.
Yeah. I don't know whether you touched on the subject in your book of work-life balance, but everybody knows how important it is, but it seems like everybody forgets about it, in our everyday life. So from your experience and what you've been through, so what do you do so that you don't forget how important it is?
Let me answer that. He had a very quiet life at work. He was working 20 hours a week, so he doesn't have this job.
Only. So for years, I had a joke to that. Look, we all get this question of work-life balance, right? Work-life balance is something that we all talk about all the time. And I always sort of said that, Mira, my wife, she has the life, I have the work. That's our balance. I have the most perfect work-life balance. And while that might get giggles and people might laugh at a cocktail conversation or whatever, the joke's actually on me. The joke's on me. And And I think rather than taking that in a facetious manner, what I learned is it's hard to balance it in a compartment. So let me explain that. So again, my grandfather's time, he left work at work. He carried a briefcase bag, but he left work at work. Nobody phoned him. People didn't have phones. Nobody used a cell phone. Wasn't invented. Nobody faxed him. There was no social media. The newspaper came in the morning. It was easier to leave work behind. It's not possible today. Our lives are 24-hour economies. What are we kidding? So rather than saying, I am going to leave my work behind, I think there's a mesh. For me, I feel my work and life are meshed together. And that's me. That's what makes me. Now, the way I get balance is that when I'm outside of work, with a loved one, with a friend, with someone that defines that other side of balance, I try to give them 100%. So if I'm talking to my children at the dinner table, and they might say it's still work in progress, but when I'm talking to my children at the dinner table, I try to be engaged. My phone is not there. I'm 100% listening to them. I'm talking to them. I'm making eye contact with them. Right? I'm empathizing with them. I'm learning from them. By doing things of that nature, I feel I have better balance. When I'm on a holiday, I'm not saying throw away the old BlackBerry or your iPhone, right? But I hide and look at my emails. I do it early in the morning. I try not to steal time away from that holiday. Because when I'm with them, I want to give them 100%. But I might work 2-3 hours in that day, but I try for them not to see it, and I try not to steal their time. That's how I create a balance.
Next question, yes. I think there's that lady
She
there.
was first.
No, that's fine. It's to
Okay.
you, yeah.
So good afternoon, everybody. I'm Sandrine Bus. I'm from Barclays. So Vishal, so nice to meet you. I bought your book before I knew about you, and I love this book. It's really, really good. I would recommend it to anyone. So although your book gives lots of advices about corporate life, someone who aspires to become bigger in the world, what would be this one advice, key advice, that you would give to someone, a woman, who aspires to become a future CEO?
Thank you, Sandrine. And very quickly, ladies and gentlemen, this is my greatest ROI. So Sandrine walks into a book court, Bagatelle or some shop. They recommend this book. I live the other part of the world. She reads this book. Never met her in my life. I get a note on LinkedIn from Sandrine. How cool is that? So, and here she is. So, look, I think this thing of being the lion, there really is to learn, men or women. Right? I was actually having this conversation with someone you all know, very famous, very sort of well-known political private sector leader of this country. And we were talking a little bit, we got into a little bit of Mauritian race, background and population and what it's looking like today. And he was talking to me about sort of, how sort of the Indian immigrants in this country have kind of, fostered them very well, but there's a plot, he felt, it was not enough, he felt. And we had a conversation around the be the lion. And I think the same thing applies to women in business, let alone men. So I think how you carry yourself, not be the lion as in rip someone's head off, but how you carry yourself, how you treat others, how you make them feel, the confidence that you develop for yourself and work through in your life, the trust and relationships you build. I kind of built a stakeholder map for people in the book, and you can download it from the website. And I talk a lot about putting your stakeholders in front of you and connecting with them on a regular basis. So we all have a Rolodex, we all have an ecosystem, we all know we have stakeholders, but do you actually talk to them? Do you connect with them? You say facetiously, I'll catch up with you, or let's do lunch, or let's catch up at a conference, but that's nonsense. You don't have a routine, you don't have a rhythm, you don't have a substantial conversation. You need to do that because people need to learn and know how is Sandrine doing over the course of a career. So if you, on a regular basis, talk to your ecosystem, whether they're mentors, whether they're stakeholders, whether they're customers, whether they're professionals inside or outside your organization, and they see the outcomes you drive, they see your dark days, they see your sunny days, then they remember that stuff. You don't need to flash some on your resume. By then it's too late or irrelevant. They need to build your resume in their head. Those that are able to achieve that Raj, my friend here in the front row, if he has had contact with Sandrine over the course of her career, has actually a resume map of Sandrine in his head. How cool would that be?